I guess also with investors right now, they should be reviewing their rent because in a lot of markets, rent has moved and it's moved in the investor's favor. And given the current climate with interest rates, if you're not working with a property manager that's savvy, then you could be missing out on a lot of rental income that's going to help you pay off your mortgage. And if you're cash flow positive, then well done, benefits to you. But if you're not, and if, the current interest rate climate is affecting your financial situation, then you should be reviewing your rent and trying to increase that. Look at comparable sales, look at realestate.com, look at RP data, look at CoreLogic domain, and just see what comparable properties are renting at, and then review yours accordingly and say, look, like it might be time to get my property manager, if she hasn't done it already, to boost my rent. And this is what we do for our clientele as property managers. We regularly review rental prices because an extra 10, 20 bucks a week, everything adds up, So yeah, and given the current climate with lower vacancy rates, accommodation is really tight right now. So yeah, now's a good time to review your rent.
Well, I guess like us as buyers agents and property managers would see more value in getting the best rent for our client than just a typical agent, because you got to understand, like the more rent we get for our client, the quicker they can pay the house down and the quicker we can buy them another property. So it's also in our best interest to make sure the client gets the highest rent. Like when you're not having to worry about those sides of things in terms of the investment side of thing, it might just be easier to let the property sit there and not worry about those things. But for us, it's part of our job and even our bare minimum and just our due diligence just to make sure that our clients are getting the highest amount of rent possible so that they can keep growing their portfolio. Because at the end of the day, like we've been seeing a lot of clients that we've signed up and managed their rentals who haven't had increases in 5, 6, 7 years. That's unbelievable. Even inflation, you should have at least increased it 20, 30% over the last 5 or 6 years, especially when rent's gone up 50, 60% in some areas, even more. So if you're paying someone to manage your property and not get you the highest rent, you're just throwing your money down the drain, really, aren't you? And then people will come in with these, really low management fees and things like that, which is great, but they're essentially doing nothing. Like I would prefer to pay a little bit more in management and get someone that assists me with my depreciation reports. They're helping me manage the property. They're getting me the highest rent. They're doing rent reviews. They're doing lease agreements and making sure that they're re-signed and followed up. And then they've got quality tenants all the time. Right. You get what you pay for.
100%. And like, you can look at it this way too. Like, would you want a cheaper property manager that's charging you 4% at $400 a week? And whenever you request a rent review, there's a process. It takes time. The response times are really slow. Or would you pay a 6 to 7%, but get $450 a week or more in rent? Because that's where the market's at. They've reviewed the market. They've listed similar properties and they have a massive backlog of applicants that are looking for similar rental properties as such in that area. So you do the maths, and even though you're paying a higher management fee, you're getting more back in your pocket as well. So it's a no-brainer sometimes with looking at using a property manager that's going to take care of your best interests.
And I've realized that for some people, like actually like owning a home is that far-fetched these days that it's not even their dream. Their dream is to rent a really nice property because they've lived in, housing commission or grown up in bad areas and things like that. And their dream is just to be able to have a good rent record, to be able to rent a nice house for their family. And they're the sort of people that you want as a client, because if they're renting one of your client's properties, they're going to look after it like it's one of their own, because they don't think they can ever achieve that dream. So I feel like rentals are starting to become a lot more popular these days and things like that. And also to add to with rent vesting, I think it's increased as well, because now people that are actually, 10, 15 years ago, your stigma was renters are like, ugh, disgusting sort of thing. Now renters can be people that actually have their own property already. Like I know people that have 10, 20, 30 properties and they still rent because rent vesting where they live makes sense from a growth perspective. So you can attract a lot better quality of tenants these days in certain areas.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, rent vesting is a lovely option for those that want flexibility, that know that, look, they can't live in an area for the next 5, 10 years. So they want that flexibility options and yeah, just rent in a nice lifestyle area where they can afford and then have their investments do work for them in the background. And then if they want to move to a nicer suburb, they have that option to do that because like the process involves with relocating, the cost involved, it can get hectic. And imagine if you've purchased a house, and some people might say that, and that's fair enough. There's an argument that, oh, look, I'll just move out and rent out my principal place of residence, but it's not all that black and white. And I know, Daniel, you've got a bit of experience with that. Like you've bought in an area that you like and you've lived in it, but the rental return and the numbers on that and buying in an area where it makes sense and data driven, like there's a massive disparity there because if you've done research correctly, you're getting better yields with the investment option. But if you've bought $1 million property and you're only getting $500 a week, for example, then your yield is not really attractive. So
No, not at all. And that's why like we even have a granny flat on our house and have somebody rent it out, get an extra few $100s a week just to help pay our mortgage down faster as well.
yeah, so it's all numbers, I feel. And if the numbers don't make sense, then it doesn't make sense, right? So
And it's just about being creative and getting excited, right? Like everyone's so negative about the media and all this interest rate rubbish and all this stuff. Like, I used to have 34.95% interest rates when I worked at G Money. And that was the norm for personal loans and things like that. But if you have the stigma that it's high and it's bad and it's these sorts of things, then you're just going to be part of society in terms of being negative and down and things like that. But now we're at a stage where like, let's not talk about the negatives. Let's look at the exciting parts. Like majority of people now that are desk-based or office-based can work anywhere in Australia they want. They don't have to go and sit in a studio in the city and then pay $500 a week rent. They could literally go out to the rural country, Gold Coast, Adelaide, anywhere, Central Coast, and just go buy a house for a quarter of the price and live where they want to live and still have the same job. Like that's exciting. We never ever thought that would ever happen. So people are always talking about all the negatives that have happened before, but what about the positives that are happening now? Like being able to work wherever you want. Most people are only going into the office one day a week and things like that. So traffic's starting to get better out in certain areas. People are spending more time at home with their family and their pets and those sorts of things. Yeah, interest rates may have gone up a little bit, but so have the property values. So is rent. We're in a rental crisis because we don't have enough properties and rent's so low at the moment that investors can charge whatever they want to get people in there. So let's talk about that sort of stuff, the things that we can make. Because if you just sit there and talk, oh, property prices are down, interest rates are going up, I'm just going to sit in my room and cry. Like, what are you achieving? Nothing. Let's look at the positives. Let's try and make money in a bad situation or make money in a downturning market and things like that. Let's get creative.